post says this: I used to seek God to bless my life. This was my post. Used to seek God to bless my life. My relationship grew and I began praising him for being in my life. I just became more and more grateful, less and less needy of him. Not that my needs became less necessarily, but my relationship became more enjoyable with him than just what I wanted from him. So I used to seek God to bless my life. Relationship grew and I began praising him for being in my life. Ultimately, I found rest, stopped striving, stopped as much, stopped living from the neediness, all of that. Ultimately, I found rest knowing Christ is my life. So the whole statement was, I used to seek God to bless my life. Relationship grew and I began praising him for being in my life. Ultimately, I found rest knowing Christ is my life. And here was Cassie's question. She said, wow, I think I'm at the, quote, a relationship with you, God, is what I desire more than anything stage. A relationship with you is what I desire more than anything stage. She's in that place. I want a relationship with you more than anything. But this is her question, but what is relationship? I've never experienced much of that with anyone beyond the surface level. So here's the deal. I looked it up. I thought, what a great but complicated question. What is, when we say that we're in relationship with God, it's not religion, it's relationship. Have you ever thought about not just what that means, like how you live in that relationship, but what does it mean to have a relationship? Because I have a relationship to this coffee, right? I relate to that. Someone walking down the street and someone says, hey, Mike, do you like coffee? I relate to coffee in a specific way. I relate to my house and my town and food and I'm dressed to go running. I relate to this shirt in a specific way because it's a running shirt. I'm going to go finishing a long running week today on tired legs. So I thought, what a great question, Cassie. Let's explore this biblically, but also sort of historically. And the word relationship, some of this that I knew, is archaic, ancient French. The root comes from relation, which means to retell or announce something that's already been said. It's a retelling, right? If I relate to you a story, then I'm retelling something that's already been told. In other words, how do I share something I've received with someone else? That's the root from which we get the word relationship. It's the retelling or the relating something. It's tough to not use. When you only have one primary word for something, it's hard to not use it in its own definition, right? The way you relate to something is how you relate something to it, right? The way I relate to my spouse, right? My relationship with my spouse is ultimately defined by how I retell, how I relate things to her. Do I relate things to her lovingly? Do I relate things to my spouse just without a filter, just how I experience something? I'm retelling it to her. Do I relate to her from her perspective? The reality is I relate things to her. I retell things to her as my wife. That is my relationship. I relate to her in that way. I relate to this shirt in a specific way because I only wear it when I'm going to go running. I relate to this cup of coffee a specific way because I wanted to use this mug this morning for my Q&A and drink this coffee. So I relate to this in light of this broadcast. We relate to things based on our experience with them and how we see them. So our relating something to anyone or anything is based on how we identify or associate with them. My wife is my wife to me, but she's not the wife of anyone else, right? So I relate to her as my wife, but I don't think of her as that way with everybody. I think of her as a brilliant psychologist and an incredible co-homemaker with me. It's not exclusively her job, but she's certainly much better at it than I am, and does more of it than I do. She's a brilliant cook and a great gardener and a wonderful daughter to her folks and a sibling to her siblings, and from the north, but no longer a northerner. So I relate to her in a lot of ways. But to me, who is she to me? She's my wife. I know a lot about her. I know how other people relate to her. But who she is to me is my beloved wife. And I could go into lots of detail about that, right, too, because not everybody relates to their wife the way I relate to my wife. So I relate to my wife in a whole context of how I associate with her and how I associate her with me. How am I connected or associated with someone determines how I relate something to them or my relationship with them. Does that make sense? I really researched this a little bit. I was up a little late and got into it because I think this is so, if you'll pardon the pun, so telling. When we say that we are not in an economy with God based on religion, but relationship, really both of those are a relationship, right? A religious relationship that's transactional, that what I do for him determines what he does for me. What we're saying is that we're relating to him as a slave driver or a business person or an employer, that we relate to him as someone that doesn't associate himself with us personally, right? It's not personal, it's business. Have you ever heard that phrase? It's not personal, it's business. Well, I'm here to tell you we're relating to God not transactionally, but personally, as people who have received the spirit of sonship. Man or woman, you've received the spirit of sonship, meaning the spirit of Christ towards his Father. You don't just have Jesus in your life, you have Jesus's relationship with the Father, right? He's Jesus' Father, and we have been entered into the relationship he shares with his Father. So when we talk about relationship with God, what we really mean is that we relate to him by associating with him personally instead of associating with him transactionally. Instead of saying it's not business, it's personal, or it's not personal, it's business, that phrase, we need to say the opposite. Instead of it's not personal, it's just business, we need to think the opposite is true. Our relationship with God is not business, it's personal. Our relationship with God, God's relationship with you, it's not business, transactional. To say it's not transactional, it's relational is kind of redundant. We're saying it's not a transactional relationship, it's a personal relationship. So to Cassie's question, well, what is a relationship? What does it mean to be in a relationship? It means that we're engaging with someone not based on merit, right? What we get from them. That's not personal, that's business. Or some extrinsic value. I see how talented you are, so I relate to you as having this great value. So I somehow get value if I know you or I relate to you. If I hang out with you, you have some extrinsic external value. You're really good at something, or you're famous, or there's something I can gain by knowing you and associating with you. So that would be a transactional relationship, a business relationship. I get something from you because I hang out with you. You really want to be in an authentic personal relationship with God, then love him for him instead of loving him for you. And that's sacrificial, right? God, I don't want from you what I can get from you. I want you.